Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wild Women Wednesdays. I'm Farah, and this is my co-host.
I'm Laura.
And today we have a very special guest who I met in the line at Dick's Burgers in Capitol Hill. I have to bring the context here. You were singing 90s R&B songs, and then I immediately joined in, obviously, and we then were singing the entire time we were waiting in line, and we then found that we had a bunch of mutual friends. But beforehand, he was like, we should know each other. I was like, we should know each other. And after that, I took your poetry workshop, which was incredible and kind of propelled me on this like path as me trying to figure out my own creativity and how to express it with the world. And since then, we've just always stayed in touch. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and so you are kind of a big deal. So I want you so I want to share kind of who are you in this world? What are you up to? What have you been doing recently?
Let's see. I was born in Texas, but I've been in Seattle since 2014. I do a number of things. I would guess I say on the civic side, I do public policy work. PhD in public policy, public administration from Texas A&M University. And so I do a lot of organizing with nonprofit and government organizations, specifically doing a lot of work around education reform and healthcare policy, and advocating and educating for equitable health policies. And then, you know, I'm also a visual artist, so I paint, I draw, and I've also been a nationally involved poet for about 15, 16 years. So I do a lot of things, but it's because my greatest fear in life is being bored.
Never any lack of something to do, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, so this is not a part of our questions, and typical Fair, I'm going off the grid here, but there's so many things. Like, I think you have this very like pragmatic, logical aspect of your life where it's the public policy kind of making sustainable change and systemic change, but then there's this like also this immense like creative side to you. And how did those balance out? Like, how did those show up in your life, and have you always had like a little dose of both within your world?
Definitely. So my mother is a musician, an artist, and a painter as well. My father was a pastor, but he was also a poet, a singer. And so it was, I guess, kind of my exposure having a father who was like a leader in community, where I was like never intimidated because other pastors and politicians and types of community leaders, we were always around them growing up. So it was just like normal people, right? And then, you know, like I said, both parents are artists. My uncle was a poet, grandmother's a musician, all my cousins, everyone in my family really plays something, from drums, keyboard, trumpets. So yeah.
Our family events in that way.
We
break into songs.
We were forced to perform songs, kind of like the Jackson 5. I remember one, I was probably about 12. So around that time, I thought I was like, I was too cool to do the like singing around. Right? So I knew that it was, I could, because I'd been to so many family reunions, I knew about the time where like people were stopping eating, and it's like, okay, within the next 30 minutes they're gonna have a talent show, and they're gonna ask my cousins to sing, they're gonna ask so and so to dance, they're gonna ask me and my brother to rap. So you know, I have a brother and two sisters, so we had a van. I didn't want to perform this year, so I asked my mom for the keys for something. I was like, oh, I need to get something out, and I just hid in the van. And like searching for you, like everyone was looking for me, and then they finally tracked me down and sent my grandmother, and she was like, I know you don't want to perform, but it makes me very proud. Do it for me. And I had to, because only grandmothers can blackmail them.
It's the deep-seated guilt trip.
Emotional blackmail. Right.
And I'm sure it does make her proud, and it makes her smile to see you perform. And now thinking about this, does your family still kind of like watch in on your performances or anything that you put together?
No, my sister said I'm an attention whore, so there.
Oh,
She's like, yeah, whatever, man.
Um,
Oh, no.
But me and my brother, we work together a lot in doing
Oh, yeah.
art. He has a gallery here in Seattle called City of Light. So we collab a lot on stuff together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I met him, I think, at your last gallery.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, little detour there, but I was just curious about that. So I was like, is this something that was always ingrained in you? But I think so much of that influence comes from, you know, having parents who were heavily involved in both, and then that impression it makes on you, and it almost becomes a part of normal life.
Just to let you know how involved we were, my dad, I told you he was a pastor, but he would literally name sermons after like Tupac and Biggie songs or like Parliament songs. Yeah, like there's this scripture in the Bible where like people are trying to get to Jesus and they can't, so they start taking the towels off of a roof and let their friend down. And he entitled the sermon "Tear the Roof Off the Sucker," which is also like a song by George Clinton.
I want this to be
Right. So yeah, so we come from a very colorful and creative family.
I love it. Well, and like thinking of this, like, so were they always encouraging you to be this individual, like to express what you were thinking, how you like your own vision, and like how did you develop the trust for yourself? Because I think sometimes it's hard, it feels almost overwhelming to be like, okay, like how do I even feel comfortable sharing and being vulnerable to a certain extent,
I mean,
right?
I think I was really blessed because, especially as, we talk about a lot of youth of color don't have a lot of role models. I had too many, men and women, people in my family, they were all doctors, lawyers, pastors, police officers, painters. So it was just like, there was never any like, there was never any like sit down overt, like we want you to be creative or we want you to be yourself. I just saw everyone in my family saying and doing what they wanted to do and not being afraid. And so it just kind of like, if you put people in an environment where everyone is being themselves and no one is critiquing or criticizing people for being right, exactly. So, and I think I got to a point, it was always respectful, but our parents always taught us, to be ourselves, and that, that there was nothing that we couldn't do. And so then we believed them. And even when they would come back and tell us later on when we were 15 or 16, hey, we were like, hey, remember what you said? And they'd be like, okay. So
I see your point.
I see your point. Exactly.
Let's tweak it a little bit. And those are the learning lessons, and then we just continue to grow as individuals, but then, they still have your back though, no matter what, which is like, this is where we're giving you feedback, but I like, that's not where you're headed. I like where you're headed.
I'm just quoting you, Mom.
Yeah. I got this from you. Gosh. I don't know if I'm ready for my daughter to have those conversations with me. But
she's taking notes. She's gonna just throw it back in your face one day. So be careful.
That's way possible. When I was even pregnant with Bella, I was like, I'm going to have an independent, strong-willed woman in my stomach. Like I just knew it. And the moment she came out, she's just been this little force from day one. And so I think of her when she's like 16 or like really just coming into her own. And I'm excited for her. And so I like hearing these examples of like, was this instilled in you? How did your parents respond? Like, how did they support you and kind of cultivate that within you, even to be able to have you like state your opinion, be able to state who you are in this world with confidence. And I think that's really important. And it's definitely something that should be, I think, ingrained a little bit more, or at least emphasized. I mean, I don't think it's talked about very often. So. I agree. Yes, anyhow. So thank you. And I think that covers kind of that idea of trust and like how has that carried out into your life even until today? Because even with the amount of artistic endeavors that you like go down of like paint and production and poetry and all of it, like there's a certain amount of gravitas that comes with that to be able to share that in the world as fearlessly as you do.
Yeah, and I think it is about there's a fine line between not caring about people and not caring what people think. I think we should always care about people, and we should always do our best to cause no harm. But when other people are involved, it's just like, okay, I wrote a poem, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you do like it, you do like it. Right, it's okay. And I think one thing that I like to emphasize in my friendships, I've always asked my friends to be as honest as possible with me. And I do the same. It doesn't always, we don't always feel great about it, but at least you know people are being honest, right?
You know where this
And I take my friendships very seriously, and I know when people are willing to critique me that they actually care, right? Because if they were just going to tell me what I want to hear, then they're just people pleasing, right?
Yeah.
If you're bold enough to say, "Hey, I love you," and that's whack, or the way you've been behaving is weird, and you need to change, or that was wrong, you shouldn't have said that, like. You know, so I appreciate when people actually do that. And you don't have to be, when you're honest, you don't have to be hurtful.
No,
right?
I think
Like,
it's intention and what you're meaning by it, and like what you.
because I know people use the term "be brutally honest." You don't have to be brutally honest. Just be honest.
Just be honest. Just brutal doesn't always have to come in the front of it.
I love you, and you should use more seasoning on this.
And I'm gonna need like
This turkey was really dry, but I'm glad I'm spending Thanksgiving with you.
and that's the misconstrued concept of honesty. And I think we're so afraid to be truly honest and to say our truth, but like I think galvanizes relationships. It's like, let's be real with each other. Let's like be able to say what we were really thinking so that we can both grow from it. And also like, you're not just thinking something else in the back of your head and you always have this mask on. It's like, take the mask off. Why? What are you holding on to it for? So I had one friend, and she was talking to her brother and sister, or her brother-in-law and her sister, about something, and she was like, if you guys need to like discuss this like when I'm not around, then I understand that too. And he looked at her and he was like, who the fuck do you think you are? He's like, like not in an aggressive way. It was like, I'm gonna say what I feel and what I like believe to be true. And like I definitely, don't mind if you hear it, because I would say this in front of anyone. And I think that those are those moments where it's like, let's just be ourselves. And we're going to talk more about authenticity later, or we can dive into it right now. What do you think, Laura?
Let's do that. Like, what does living authentically look like for you?
I think living authentically means that you can look yourself in the mirror every day and not regret what you did. And if you regret what you did, you can forgive yourself and move on.
Wow. Oh, whoa. I gotta pause you right there. That's a radical idea. Forgive yourself. Say more.
I mean, it's obvious that we all make mistakes, right? And I think a lot of times I've run into family members and friends or exes, people who can't enjoy the present goodness because they're beating themselves up for something they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or like, well, I mistreated this person in my last relationship, so I'm not worthy of love, or
you're carrying the pain.
Right, you're carrying the pain on, or I was irresponsible, the first 3 years of parenting, so now I'm not worthy to be, people have these things stuck, and it's like, okay, but you have a new chance, you have a new opportunity. So acknowledge what you did wrong. But now once it's acknowledged and you've said what you had to say to that person or to yourself, you've got to move on.
You got to let it go.
Right. You've got to start living now.
Because otherwise that's kind of shape shifting what the present moment is, because you're still carrying on these stories from the past into the future moment, which in actuality, every moment's different. So it's like, you're not being truly authentic and present if you are so about
and really and truly, right, all we have is the stories about ourselves and about other people, right? If there was no memory, right? If there was no, then you'd have no guilt, you'd have no shame, you'd have no pride, you'd have no anything, right? If you didn't have a memory, you just wake up and you just live your life, right? And so just as we have sometimes false senses of our own greatness, we also have false senses of our own worthlessness. And we got to get rid of both of those and just look at it as whatever happened today, you know, even when I look at positive, like I've done positive things. Well, none of that matters if I go out and do something stupid today, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we have to realize that it's great to have lived a good life, but if you have lived a good life, you still got to keep being good to people that you care about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've lived a life that you regret, well, you're still here, so you still have an opportunity to do something different. I think the best thing about being a human is choice. Free will, the ability to say, I want to do something, and I want to be a good person. I want to be a chef. I want to be a skater. I want to be a dancer. Whatever it is, you can do it, as long as you're still here. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. I haven't really thought about it that way. And so thank you for that. I definitely will take a step back and kind of consider. I love like specifically what you said about a false sense of like worthlessness or like lack of worth as opposed to worthiness. Cause I think we go around and we're like, oh, that person's full of themselves. But rarely we point out like, oh, that person's empty of themselves, or like, you know, they're piling up this false sense of worthlessness. And, you know, that's a lot of people are hauling around a lot of things. So I really love that. Thank you.
I think more often than not, honestly, I was just thinking, and then we're treating people differently because of that too, and projections, and the world mirrors what we believe about ourselves and the world around it, right?
Right.
So if it's constantly clouded with other opinions of the past or things that stories that you've made up that, you know, and honestly don't always have a lot to do with reality. So it's nice to be able to clear that up. Yeah. How do you stay authentic? Like, is this just something like, do you like from this like upbringing of just truly being yourself and being supported and encouraged to do so? Or do you have things that you incorporate into your life, like rituals, to be able to help anchor you into the present moment, or even just that forgiveness aspect?
You know, I think holding yourself accountable is a good way to stay authentic. And this might sound silly, but every day I have a to-do list. But the to-do list isn't just things that I have to do at work, right? So it'll be like in the morning, like read, pray, meditate, work out, practice Spanish. But then it'll have like 4 or 5 things for work. But then it'll be like call your cousin, text your sister, like all those things. Like, man, I know some people like, well, you're checking off, but it's like, I think it's okay to like put people on your list and remember to call them, and you know, like be very intentional about staying involved in your friends and family members' lives, and taking note every day to like send something kind, or you know, to reach out to a friend and like, oh, I haven't talked to Denise in 3 weeks, call Denise, you know, just stuff like that.
Well, and prioritizing it ultimately, because if you're adding it to-do list, you're making it a non-negotiable within your day, then you're saying this is important to me and I want to make sure to make time and space for it. And then you do.
Right. Yeah. I think the other thing besides like writing everything down each day, is really surrounding yourself with people that have the same kind of focus and same kind of values, because they're going to hold you accountable. Right. And they don't all have to be holding you accountable in the same thing. You might have people who like hold you accountable for, you know, being mindful and spiritual. You might have someone who holds you accountable about finances. It's like, hey man, how have you been spending money? You've been saving, you've been wasting it, you know? And I do have those friends. I have friends who I call about and we only talk about friendship, relationship stuff. I have other friends, we're friends, but we talk more about, you know, investments or money, and you know, so I think, you know, whatever your goals are and whatever you're envisioning the person that you want to be or become, they should be reflected in the 4 or 5 closest people to you. Because then you're going to reinforce those same values, right? If you're trying to be a better person and you have the 4 people you talk to most are very careless,
You're like, they're not keeping you accountable, and they're
Right.
not reinforcing the behavior, and you're also not seeing it exemplified in the people that
Right.
are closest to you within your circle too.
Right. So I think it's important to be intentional with yourself and make those lists, but I also think you got to be intentional about who you're talking to on a day to or weekly basis. And the sucky thing, I guess, about it is sometimes you outgrow your friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you outgrow your family, and there doesn't have to be some overt "you're no longer necessary in my life" kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I just think it's
doesn't
like,
have to be malicious.
it doesn't have to be malicious. It's just like, hey, I used to hang out with this cousin when we were younger, and now I just see him at the family reunion and say hi to him then. But if we're not on the same path, you know.
You know, and this is funny that you're bringing this up right now, and I think it definitely, like, just to like kind of incorporate. No, I'm just gonna go right into it. I was like, let's wrap up rituals before we move on, but I was like, I'm curious about your thoughts on this, because I do think recently I've been really evaluating who I want to spend time with and with the people in my life, and it's been like a major focus, like a primary focus. You know, and if you're following the new moon and the solar eclipse and all the eclipse seasons, all about this like letting go of the old.
Right.
And so it's like, what are you cultivating in your life now, and what are you inviting in for the next few months? And I think within that in particular, it's focused in on relationships.
Yeah.
And so I've been so intentional, like, who am I spending time around? What are they reinforcing in my life? How do I feel after I'm around them? Like, what conversations are we having? What topics are we like discussing? And like, what are their dreams and hopes for the future? And are they working towards them? And are they encouraging me to work towards my own? And I think that type of kind of exchange and support is really what you're seeking in the people that you surround yourself for in your life. And it sounds like you are very aware of who those people are and are intentional about who you do keep around, and, you know, are okay with saying goodbye when it's time to say goodbye.
Right. And, you know, I think it's about looking for people who are looking to share, right? Like, I don't want it to seem transactional, but you need to be around people where, you know, when you can share with them, but they can also share with you, or you can pour your heart out and they'll pour their heart. Like any type of relationship that's one direction, I don't think is worthwhile.
Well, and I don't think it'll feed you, you
Right,
know, it won't
right.
feed your soul, because you're constantly giving and not receiving anything in return. We just did a podcast on the gift of friendship and kind of highlighted that too, which was timely, because we talked about all of that. And then this has been coming up for me as it does, as the universe works out.
Right.
It always starts to reoccurring and appear in my life.
And
So,
it's not random. I don't think anything in the universe is random. I think we get attracted to the energy that we're putting out, right? So
so true. Well, so it sounds like, you know, the community and the people that you surround yourself is about a big part of your rituals and how you stay present, how you stay true to who you are. And they are direct reflections of kind of what you're, you know, creating in your life, which is really special. And I think we kind of sometimes forget the importance of that. So I think that's definitely a role, as well as, you know, constantly reading, stimulating your mind, meditating, and traveling. Oh, you are a big traveler.
But I think, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think it was a famous writer that said, travel destroys ignorance. And so, you know, we have so many concepts and misperceptions of other people, right? Whether it's traveling to a neighborhood you haven't been to, or traveling to another country, right? Or another state. It's just, you know, I know a lot of people, they've never been to Texas, they've never been to Mississippi. So in their head, they're like, oh, everyone in Texas is racist and horrible. It's like, well, once you go, there's just check it out. Just check it out, right? Just check it out. And I think, you know, the most common thing I've seen when I've traveled is, as humans, we've got different ways to do things and cook things and dress, but fundamentally, I think we have more in common.
Always.
than we have dividing us. And if we could focus on the 80% that we agree on, as opposed to the 20% that we disagree on.
Well, and even
Right.
being okay with having that
Yeah,
variance
it's
of
okay.
opinion.
It's okay to
It's like being open to receive their perspective, be like, I've never thought about it that way, and I'm kind of excited that you've like presented this new, like, even if I don't agree, I'm just
Right.
excited to have the conversation.
I think the most boring conversation is one where people is like, yep, I agree with every single thing. And it doesn't even have to be a disagreement, it's just providing another perspective on something. I think there's a story about these Sufi Muslims, and Sufis are viewed as like kind of mystics in Islam. There's a story about these people who are surrounding an elephant, but they're all blindfolded. And so then there's an instructor and says, okay, can everyone reach out and tell me what the elephant is like? And someone touches like the legs, someone touches the tail, someone touches the tusks, the trunk.
Yeah.
And so they all give completely different descriptions
Yeah.
of the elephant because they're touching different parts of it. Right? But it's still the elephant.
Every time.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same when we have discussions. What does friendship mean? What does love mean? What does loyalty mean? The three of us may give three different answers. It doesn't mean any of us are wrong. It's just we're telling it from our own environmental perspective and our own story through the lens of our region, through the lens of our gender, through the lens of our ethnicity, through the lens of our age, through the lens of our biases, through the lens of our hurts, through the lens of our wins, right? So we're telling through all those things, right? If you went to school and the teachers all loved you and you all got straight A's, your interpretation of high school, when you're like, oh, wasn't high school great?
Yeah.
Well, depends. So.
And the memories that you created from them, and the memories that we solidify within our minds too. So I think then even within that perspective, it's like, what did you take away from it? What do you still carry with you and on your heart about that situation?
Right.
And I think even then that can shift and mold a little bit too. So.
So have you had a major turning point, like a major turning point moment in your life?
I would definitely say that the last 3 years have been super difficult. So right before the pandemic started, I lost my uncle, who was really like a big brother. He's like 16 years older than me, to cancer. And then during the pandemic, my father passed. My college roommate also passed, and I had another friend pass, on top of having multiple friends lose their parents and stuff during that time. So it was obviously a time of where a lot of people couldn't see family members and friends, and so I had a lot of time to reflect, obviously, because
you were secluded.
I was living by myself. There was, I wasn't able to do the social things that I usually did. I think it was a turning point in the sense of I've always valued family, but it really put an emphasis on how important friends and family are. I'm the kind of person, I love to go to karaoke like once a week at least. For real.
Do you go once a week?
At least. Yeah.
Oh.
That's because you're good at it. It's like the performer in you.
But the people like that you see every week, right? And you don't know them in any other context, right? You don't know what their job is. You don't know what their marital status or economic status. You just know, hey, that's Joe from the bar, and we always always enjoy his songs. He always enjoys mine. I think it just really emphasized the importance of family, the importance of community. It's also when I got back into painting. When I was younger, before I was doing poetry, I was really into visual art. And as I got older, I started doing performing and writing more poetry, right? But I think, after my father died, that period was it was a time where it was probably the first time in my life where I couldn't really express myself or my feelings through words, which is where painting I really got back into painting and drawing, because I could say things on the canvas that I couldn't
Yeah, it was
express.
a type of art therapy for you, which I think comes up quite often. I know of a few people that have used that as a way to heal from losing someone that meant a lot to them, because it was like there's no words,
Right.
and it's just a feeling. And then, but you know, I think so much of the grieving process is expressing that and sharing it. And sometimes when you can't say that with words, it's like, how else can I get this out? Like, how can I like almost like extract this pain from me so that I can process it?
Right.
Yeah. Which I've talked to you about, and you and your father were really close growing up too. What was like one of your favorite things about him?
I think he was just incredibly bold. You know, he said what was on his mind, and that was it. Yeah. And so again, you know, it has allowed me to be that kind of person. And again, also, it was never in a rude or, you know, bashful way. It's just like, we don't have to be afraid of what people think, because they're just people. Like, you know, so.
I love that. Well, and it's obviously was a huge point for you, and kind of like probably how you viewed the world. And how else did it like change? Like, what do you feel like really shifted within your life after that point?
You know, and I'm doing a lot of quotes, but I love reading, so sorry. But
I need to apologize for that.
Can't remember exactly who it was. It may have been Plato, but basically he talked about how a person really doesn't really come fully themselves until they lose a parent. And the reason behind this was because as long as you have a mom, a dad, right, you have someone else that has the answers, or at least that you think has the answers that you can go to. But at that point where you lose a parent, then you're like, now I'm the person that people are going to come to for questions. And a really sobering moment at my father's funeral, we were at the gravesite. I wasn't I wasn't on the program as a pallbearer, but they needed, it turns out when we got to the gravesite, they needed one other person to help carry the casket, and I was that person. And I looked up, and the people who were carrying the casket, it was some of my dad's cousins, it was his brothers, myself, and some of my cousins. And that moment, I realized that every single one of us had lost their fathers. And it was really it really hit me, because these are the guys who I grew up at all the family reunions while all of our fathers were barbecuing and drinking beer. And, you know, we were all playing football, you know, 9, 10, 11 years old, and our dads were cooking. And I was like, damn, every single one of us had lost our fathers. And so now it's like, that's a real turning point in life, where the little kids, the little cousins, right? Nephews, nieces, they're looking up to us as the leaders of the family. Right. So that was kind of like a wow moment.
Well, and to be able to kind of step into that fully and own that, has there been any like, how do you like, was that like a conflicting thing for you, or do you kind of like,
it was just acknowledgement, like, oh, we're here. You know,
it's now,
it's like, and you know, there's nothing to run from. It's gonna happen, and there's gonna come a time when we die, and our children and nieces and nephews, and you know, they'll have to step up. That's just passing the baton. It's part of life.
It is. And it's so much, and I think trusting and teaching and sharing as much as you can. I think this is something that, you know, you've mentioned a few different times that your father and, you know, both of your parents beautifully did, was to really equip you with the tools you needed to be the best version of yourself and the fullest expression of who you are. And so that when you're in the world, they're proud of you, they know who you are, and then you're able to be confident in that and continue on the legacy. Right?
Have you been practicing your barbecuing skills? You've been past the spatula, right?
Very good. In fact, when I was on the way over here, I was talking, I was in Uber and the guy was from Florida. So we were talking about different Southern dishes and I was talking about my barbecue sauce, which I make from scratch. I take some tomatoes, reduce them in some wine, add some Dijon mustard, some brown sugar, some maple syrup, some sea
This is
salt.
formulating in my mind.
Yeah, take notes.
It's really good. It
I
takes,
like the Dijon mustard.
yeah,
Yeah.
it adds a different kick
Yeah.
to it, and some, they have the spices in there.
Yeah.
too, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
good. Slow cook it for, I mean, at least an hour, but you can go longer. But if you put all that together, about an hour, you'll have a pretty solid sauce.
Nice.
I might have to try this out. Don't mind as Michael Jackson starts playing. It's like I have a 1:11
Okay.
every day. I'm supposed to take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath. Should we all take
Sure.
a deep breath together? Think about my rituals. All right, well, back to it. Thank you so much for being here
Yeah.
and just sharing all of this and your perspective of the world and your story. It's been, as you know, someone that's watching from the outside and also gets to see you on the inside is just incredible. And I value our friendship. Excited. This is also one of the reasons why I'm going to Mexico City next year. So
Oh.
it's like you have to go to Mexico City.
It's a great, it's a really rich city, great art. I went to the art week last year. It wasn't the only time I've been, but I definitely fell in love with that city and felt ashamed because the first time I went to Mexico City was 2020 and I grew up in Texas. So it's like an hour and a half flight from Dallas. And before I ever went to Mexico City, I went to Paris, I went to Madrid, I went to London, I went to Ireland, I went to Iceland. Yeah, I went to all these places all over the world and I hadn't literally just like gone down the street. So it's a great place.
Everyone that I've talked, and now it's like literally come up in my life like 5 or 6 times, and then you move there. And I was like, all right, it's done. It's done and done. I'm going to Mexico City. And she was just looking at flights. I think, anyways, we won't go into detail. I was like, I think I'm gonna go this weekend. Let me see what you're thinking about. We'll talk about that after we get offline. Thank you for being here. And our last question, as always, is what's your love song?
My favorite love song, I think, and I have a billion in my head, but I think Overjoyed by Stevie Wonder is a really great one. I think it opens over time. I've been building my castle of love just for two, and you never knew you were the reason. You can take the two out and just like, if you're building a life for love, you should be building it for yourself first. And you should definitely be in love with yourself and all of your flaws, because that's what makes us who we are. And it's okay to know who you are and be comfortable with some things about you that are just like, hey, this is who I am. I'm not saying anything that's abusive to other people, but like, hey, I laugh. When I laugh, I'm really, really loud. I'm not gonna stop laughing loud. I'm not gonna stop.
I'm not gonna dim who I am.
I'm not gonna stop talking about my favorite karaoke song. I'm not, right? I'm not gonna start. So I saw this.
What's your favorite karaoke song, by the way?
So many, but I think
Okay, sorry.
I'll talk about two. Don't Speak by No Doubt. One, and Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. But my greatest power,
see this like
my greatest power is that I can start telling a story, go on 17 tangents that seem unrelated, and then bring it all back. My mom says that my greatest power kind of relates to that. She said, you as a kid would like be talking to me about something and you would fall asleep. And then in the morning, as soon as you woke up, like I was saying, Mom, next week we need to go to Six Flags. And she's like, how do you remember? What you were saying? Right. It's like, oh yeah, let me finish the sentence.
I'll pick up exactly what I left off.
Sorry.
Oh, I do love both the love songs though too, and the self-love aspect. I think finding, I truly believe the only way you can really love someone else is if you give yourself that same love.
Right, because if you don't already have love for yourself, then you're seeking love and worth from the other person.
Mhm.
So you should already have self-worth. You're not getting your worth from the other person. You're just sharing
Sharing.
the love that you have for yourself with
Mhm.
that other person and vice versa. Right?
Exactly.
You gotta have something to share it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and if you don't accept your flaws, then it's gonna be really hard for you to accept someone else's too.
Right.
I think that comes along with it. So love all around. Love all around. What's your love song this week, Laura?
I'm gonna go with one of my old favorites, an Ani DeFranco song, "As Is." And
Okay.
so it's about accepting someone like I told you I love you as is, meaning I'm not gonna change you and dedicate it to myself because, right? Like accept self-acceptance, just like you were saying. So there's a line in it, it's like some may say you're an asshole, but that's okay. I'll take you as is. I like that too. It's kind of like, well, okay, I know what the deal is. So, that's all about accepting another person for who they really, really are and kind of believe them when they tell you who they are.
You know, you just made me think about something, and I think sometimes when you're in a friendship or a relationship and people are scared that you want to change them, it's they're projecting because they really want to change themselves, and they think you see what they see about themselves, and of course you don't, because there's no way. You're like, and you might like that thing about them, right? So I think that happens a lot when they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you still love me after this, this, and this," and like, yeah, I do.
Like, why wouldn't I?
Right, exactly.
It's a part of who you are. But I think that comes, over time and like self-study and accept, like you said, an acceptance of who you are. Cause then it's like this, and I think that's what you kind of live through and through is like, this is who I am. And I'm confident and secure with who that person is. And I also see you for who you are. And I accept that.
Right.
And I care about you for that reason. So it's an exchange though. It's still an exchange. Right. Okay. My, Don't Go by, is it Tewi?
Okay.
T-E-W-Y.
All right.
And Kyle Betty. And it's just, I was listening to it actually before we started the podcast, but it is all about just like kind of just relaxing with someone and just like, don't go, like, let's do this, don't go, let's get in, like into this. And it's kind of this idea of just like going with the flow of life and chilling with someone, but without any expectations, which I just feel like sometimes I'm like a doer. So then when it's like, let's just not do anything. And if you can still enjoy your company, even while you're not doing anything and being in that stillness, I think that is a really amazing gift.
Can I share one more thing about music?
Keep
I
going.
think I've said this to you,
Share whatever
but
you
I'll
want.
share this with you.
Yeah.
I'm a music, like I am a music head. Like I like find rare facts about songs and like I just geek out about it. So one of my favorite things is finding songs that respond to other songs. So say for example, like,
You told me.
Yeah, I told you about that, right?
Yes,
Like Benny King, has Stand By Me, right?
Yeah.
Then the Pretenders in 1987, I'll Stand By You, right? And they even like have direct lines that are responding to each other. Like, I think he says, Benny King says, if the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall and the mountains crumble to the sea, I won't cry as long as you stand by me, right? And the Pretenders say, and when the night falls on you, baby, feeling all alone, you won't be on your own, I'll stand by you, right? So that's like an obvious like response, right? Then there's like, me and Simone had a song called Blackbird, and basically paraphrase, it's like Blackbird, why you trying to fly, Blackbird, your wings are broken, nobody's gonna love you, right? And then Paul McCartney, Blackbird, singing that to him, shall not take these broken wings and learn to fly. Exact same name, but one's responding to the other one. Like one says you're broken, and the other's like you are broken, but still try to fly.
Yeah.
But my favorite, and this is where I get into music conspiracy theory. So
we'll go there. Let's go.
Jeff Buckley has a song called Lover, You Should Have Come Over. Right? And a lot of people know Jeff Buckley for his version of Hallelujah. But so he has a song called Lover, You Should Have Come Over, and it explains why the lover should have come over. Then later, Nora Jones, and this is why it's a conspiracy, because it's not obvious, but I think her song, Don't Know Why Don't know why I didn't come by is a response to Lover, You Should've Come Over, right? So, but there's tons of songs like that, and like I geek out like every time I find a song. It's like
I don't make these correlations. So you just like listening.
I just
because,
listen.
well, you have a gift and an eye for lyrics and the like
Right.
the
I'm just always paying attention to the lyrics, so yeah.
you brought this up to me and I've never forgotten it. But then also I think of like within poetry, it's like that sample pulling something from another song or another like poem or whatever it is, and then incorporating it into your creation.
Right.
Which then if you're paying attention and if you really like follow someone, then you're like, oh, this is what they're doing. And then it's so intentional, but if you're not even curious about it, you would never catch on. It's still good, but like I think of like there's so many great artists out there, and I think the real greats are the ones that incorporate that, and then they go into like, who are the people before me, who do I look up to, and how did they influence my music or my art or whatever it is, and then they're all interwoven, and then there's this common theme of spirit, I think, a little bit too, right?
That's a superpower. I'm gonna go ahead and like next time somebody's asking, you're gonna have a superpower, I'm gonna throw that one at them.
Now you know why I can see her. I'm like, I find him fascinating, and I'm so here. Thank you. And thanks to all of you for joining us in this conversation and kind of being a part of Wild Women Wednesdays. It's always a pleasure, and thank you, Laura, for being the co-host, making it all happen, making the magic happen.
No, thank you both. I appreciate getting to like share this magic. Yeah, I definitely see why you can just binge on Ben.
You should all binge on Ben, actually, and find him. How would they find? How would someone find
on Instagram? Ask a brother, AskABROTHER. Yeah,
and he always has just like that provoking your stories. Like I literally like seek them out actually, and I'm like, what did Ben post today? And I'll go through it, and it's like always just like a little all over the board, but then all of the representation of you, but I'm like, it's also clearly still your point of view, which I just find fascinating, and it's an art form all of its own. So
it's like one thing I do like about IG, it's like all your friends have a little TV show.
What's going on in your mind? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Follow him. Also, benisrael.com is your website. And tons of art there too, and then you can find it all within his Instagram. So follow away. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. See y'all later.